Hey Laura, so excited to have you here today. Thank you for taking time out of your day to connect with us.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, great. Well, I want to introduce Laura. She's a very good friend of mine, first off, so I'm just going to put that out there. I have known Laura for what, 20 years maybe? I don't even know how long. Sometimes the years just fly by. But when I met Laura, she's very different than the person she is today. When I met her, she was sharing the story about how she was in her kitchen one day and her son was having a panic attack. And she had a panic attack right along with him. And so they needed two ambulance to get them both to the hospital because she was so tied up with his worry, and that story led her to go on a journey with me. At that time, I was teaching a shamanism school in a program, and she joined it. And I want to fast forward to what she does now, and then we'll go back to see how did Laura go from anxiety to living in her soul purpose and really passionately creating the life that she loves now and that she's very present in. So as of today, Laura has, well, she has many roles, but she works within my business as a lead healer and coach for Journey of the Healer and helps me help hundreds of people transform their lives through healing and coaching. And she also has her own business called Mindful Moms. And Mindful Moms is where her gift lies in terms of being present and available for other mothers to help their children through what their gifts are. So she works on supporting moms of LGBTQ kids and teenagers and young adults. And I have spent years watching her raise her kids and have seen her brilliance around this. So anyone that needs support and managing um, kids that are this age or have a preference, then she's a great person for that. So welcome, Laura. Thanks for being here today.
Ah, thank you.
So, Laura, we want to talk about your, first of all, your story. Like, where were you in that moment in the kitchen where your son was having a panic attack? Was that just a one-off, or is that something that was always occurring in your life?
Yeah, so the panic attack piece was definitely a wake up call, right? Because my son was in the like I can't breathe and all of this, and like I was like I didn't even have any idea what to do with that, so I went straight into panic, and it and my life at that time was I would joke when I look back that I was a world class worrier. I could worry about everything and anything. And and worrying I grew up with it. Like it was in my family, that's what you did. And what I actually got, what you helped me get in touch with, Marianne, was that I had a belief that was if I didn't worry about my kids, then it meant I didn't love them. So that to love them, I got to worry about them.
Mhm.
And as you began to free that up for me, what what I began to see was that I spent all of my life because I was so worried. I was always in the future trying to plan the next perfect thing. I was never present in the moment. And so like you can't create anything from the future and nothing is ever perfect. So I was missing out on being present in the moment. And I didn't have a I was not firmly centered in what was even possible for me. So worrying to me was a natural thing. Like I didn't even know I was worrying. And so the panic attack and the like, wow, look how fast that escalated was like, okay, I got to do something different. And yeah.
You know, it's so interesting because so many people that I work with and talk to come with low level anxiety or low level worry. And I was in that same boat years ago. My husband used to say, I worry about not having anything to worry about before I started my own journey.
Don't you hate it when your husband's right?
Yes, I hate when he's right. So I could put myself in that category too. And I noticed for me, what helped shift me out of that place was my worry came from a different place. My worry came from so everything was going well. I had everything that I wanted or needed in life at the time, and yet there was something missing. There was something unfulfilled. There was some way that I didn't feel like I was showing up as 100% myself. And I couldn't even name it at the time. It was just this low level experience I was having. Well, like being in my dream job, married to my husband, we had a home, we traveled all the time. But there was always this like gap between really being present and happy with what I had to feeling a little bit separated. So it sounds like a similar situation.
Yeah, it was absolutely similar, and I found myself at that place because I'd been at a job that I loved for 17 years, and then I found I no longer loved it anymore. And I didn't know what I would do next, and I didn't know who I was without my work, right? I didn't know who I was without being in corporate, without having a role. So I was like a senior vice president. That's who I was the role.
Yeah.
And that had a lot of perks with it that were great, but it was no longer filling me up. And so when I went to switch, like when I walked away from that, and I did walk away from it, and I thought I'm just going to get another job in corporate, and that's when I met you. And so I should have known that all bets were off at that point. But that was the point where it also became clear that, without worrying, I didn't know what I had no idea what I wanted in life. I had no idea what my purpose was. And even before we got to purpose, we got to do the work around the step of I didn't even give myself permission to have needs myself. So I would plan a meeting at work for 10 different people. And then at the end of the day, I couldn't make the meeting because I didn't check my calendar once in the process.
Right.
And like, I just never thought about how that worked. And again, you were the one that helped me to see that um, I had a belief that if my needs were met, somebody else's wouldn't be met. So I never stood in the conversation long enough to be able to get to where both of our needs were met. And so for me, it started with actually understanding that I didn't even know what I needed. I couldn't articulate that, so I couldn't create that in the world. And then once I got to that place, there it was that, okay, so what am I creating in the world? And as I was in a class with you and developing my purpose, first of all, I didn't believe that I was going to get one, right? Like you're walking us through the process, and I'm like, yeah, nothing good is going to come out of this, right? Like I'm just thinking this is not going to be whatever it is. And it turned out to be perfect, right? And so, part of my purpose is around having everyone experience the magic and freedom of acceptance. And that's one of the reasons why I work with moms, and especially moms of LGBTQ kids, because like we get to be in accepting ourselves so we can accept our kids 100% and they can feel that in the world. And yet, even when I got that statement, right, like the end of it, to have myself and others experience the magic and freedom of acceptance, I didn't know what to do with that
Mm.
because I was looking for, like, okay, so now what do I do next?
Yeah, what's the magic pill? What's the next roadmap? First of all, I got chills when you said, oh, and that led me to working with my kids because we have to own our own power. We have to own our own sense of self. We have to see ourselves in our brightest light to be able to contribute to others. And when we're not coming from that place, that's when most women get overwhelmed, overburdened, wrung out, drained, because most of the time you're coming from a place of serving everyone else but you. So I just wanted to point that out. And isn't it interesting? The other thing I wanted to go back to was I was also in corporate and had my career there first and loved it, loved it, loved it. And then I had my triplets that I took a quote unquote a year off. And I went back well, I actually went back after 6 months because it was easier being at work than being home all day with the three of them. And then after like a year, I decided, you know what? I waited a long time for these babies. I'm going to be home with them. And it was quite a process when you think about who you've been up until that point. If you've always worked in business, if you always had that identity, whether it's vice president, director, a C kind of responsibility, um, if you always come from that place and you introduce yourself from that place, right? It's so casual. You're at a neighborhood party, you're at a soccer game, you're here, you're there, and you're like, oh, yes, I'm the vice president of this. And you don't even think about it. But it's instant credibility and identity. And when you step out, you lose that. And so for many, it's a journey to rediscover who they want to be. And I honor the people that do the work to get to discover who they want to be rather than, staying on the roller coaster because they're afraid to get off. Now, I also want to know, I know there's realities, like many people have to work, right? Like they have to work in two jobs or have a professional job, but it's not a reason that you have to give up yourself. Like you can do your journey, your healing, your way of just coming more into your own and work.
Yeah, that's so that's so well said because I always think about it as, I was a very unlikely candidate to end up doing healing work in the world,
Mm.
right? So when I first met Marianne, one of the things she said was like, "Oh, I see blocks in your heart chakra," and this was 20 years ago, and I was like, "My what? You see what in my what?" You're like, yeah, okay. And so it's interesting because on my journey, right, as Marianne said, I ended up working with her and also joining one of her programs. And it was not a no brainer for me to join the program. Marianne said, "It's a great way to be healed yourself." And I'm thinking, but I'm not going to be a healer. And so, like, I was actually reluctant, but something called me forward, and I'm glad I trusted it. And then we still joke to this day because that first program I was in, I slept through every single meditation. Like, I literally would be knocked out so that the work could be done. And then I thought, okay, good, I'm done. And I found myself continuing the work because I was clear that that was the work that was going to support my children. And it's so clear to me that the work I do with my children is one of my biggest gifts in this world. And they required more of me than I ever would have told you I would have been able to give. Right. So it wasn't just me teaching them, it was me learning from them and
Mm.
unlearning what I had learned to learn from them.
Mm.
And then, I found myself in the next year going, oh, like this is the work I'm supposed to be in the world and then do in the world. And I was in that same place with my purpose of, oh, but what does that look like? And it's all been this taking one step at a time and trusting that voice inside of me to know, okay, this is in alignment for now, and not looking too far ahead. Like it's very clear to me that if Marianne had said to me at the very beginning, "You're meant to be a healer," I would have been like, yeah, no, I would have run away from it. So the universe lined it up for me to come in the way that I got to work and come in. And so now when you look at areas of my life, so I do work with moms of LGBTQ teens. I also coach in Marianne's program. I also coach in a leadership program. But here's what's really interesting, right? One of my purposes is to expand perspectives, to connect a movement by expanding perspectives, right? And so what's a coach do, right? A coach helps, supports people to see what else is possible for them. And so I love that my whole life has alignment around my purpose, even though I may be doing three or four or five discrete things,
Mhm.
that it's all being guided by that purpose.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's what I love about finding purpose, right? When we find our purpose, um, there's a journey that opens up for us because a lot of times we don't know quite how to hold it, or we come from the perspective of what we know rather than from the perspective of what can unfold. My purpose was so vague that it kept me trying to figure it out, and I feel like that's how my spirit guides got me hooked, right? Like mine was to creatively create destiny, and and it came from parts of my life that everything I did was around creating something. So I knew that. But what was creating destiny? I had no idea. Now, 20 years, 25, 30 years later, I sit back and I look back and I think, wow, what have I been helping people do, right? Is to create their destinies, to create how they want to show up in this world and what they want to do. And I happen to do it with healing, teaching, and guiding. And so we get these purposes, and then how we align to them or play them out is totally up to us. There's no one way is the right way, which gives us a lot of freedom and flexibility and possibility to keep growing and changing and shifting, which I think is so powerful. So, Laura, what was probably the number one biggest takeaway for you when you went through Journey of the Healer? Like when you stepped beyond your anxiety, you could step into your power, you could see your purpose. What was like your number one takeaway?
So I love this question because what came up for me when you asked was I went into the journey of the healer with a lot of anxiety and a lot of anxiety and comparing and contrasting and wondering like what I was actually going to do with it or why I was there or like I knew I needed to be there but I didn't understand. And so the biggest gift for me was 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 what emerged is in my confidence and my power, like really being able to see my own value and worth. And so, in Journey of the Healer, it's really um, interactive. And so Miriam will teach something and then she'll send us all off in groups of three to do it. And I'd end up in a breakout room, with people thinking, I don't know what to do. Like, what if it doesn't work? Like, I had all of these things that would come up for me and it would be present, for maybe 10 seconds. And I would start doing the work and I would shock myself that I would actually know how to do it. And somebody would receive healing from it. They would be like, "Oh my gosh, that was incredible." And I'm still here thinking like, "Did I really do it?" So, so for me it was just really being able to own, right? Like to let go of the limitations of my mind that I had put on myself about what was possible and
Mhm.
what this work could look like and really to begin to just own my own value and worth.
And your own gifts, right? And
Mhm.
intuition. And what I love that, Laura. I love that because I always say suffering comes when we compare and contrast ourselves to others because we will always compare and contrast ourselves with people that are doing things differently or better or bigger or something. But it doesn't do us any good to be in that comparison. And so when we can step out of that and just own our own gifts, our own genius, our own way of being, and know that that's more than enough that you bring as your contribution, like just to show up and be present, is powerful.
Right, and that it took me a few years to actually step into that, to actually see that my being present creates the space for shifting in people because of who I am. Like I like that whole concept was like, what? Like what do I have to do? Right? So it was really geared around doing. And the other thing that I love is that when I'm challenged with something new, I will still have the momentary like whoop. And the difference is now it's momentary and it doesn't stop me that
Mm.
I dive right into it. And so it also is like I can so relate to that and people that come in and say, well, I'm afraid I can't do it or I didn't get it right. And you're like, okay, there is no right. Like, what is happening for you? Because it shows up for all of us so differently.
Right. And that's the brilliant thing is recognizing that We're all born into this world with gifts, with our knowing intact, with our intuition open. And over the years, we sort of get separated from it. So it isn't about teaching some new thing. It's about bringing you back home to who you were meant to be, where I think all the power lives for people.
Right. And the thing that was really interesting in this whole journey with you, Marianne, is that part of me always felt like, would my family accept me? Right? Like this is, I grew up in an engineering family, and I was this magical free spirit, and like and emotional. So emotions got to go like got to lock myself in my bedroom when I was emotional. So as I began to do this work in the world, there was this concern about what would happen with my family, how would they react to it, and what's interesting is I was less concerned about my husband and my kids, and it was more like my family of origin. And what's so fascinating right now is the relationship that I have with my parents, based on them being able to acknowledge how who I am in the world today, aligned with my soul. They can see that and feel that and acknowledge that and be proud of it. And like that was something that I didn't even think was possible. Like I wasn't sure they would get it. And yet really I was the one that didn't get it. Like they saw it way more clearly than I did.
And what an amazing gift, right? Like, what a gift to have that experience with your parents and maybe your extended family. It's powerful. It goes back to that statement we said earlier. When we accept ourselves, when we step into our own power, then no one can really take it away from us, right? Like if we own it and keep it within us, then we're centered no matter what's going on around us.
Yeah, and that was definitely a huge gift for me as I've been in this work, is being able to stand in my own center and my own knowing and let other people have reactions all around me and not take it on. It's not mine to hold. And um, the techniques that you taught around how to protect yourself, how to clear your energy, how to protect yourself, those were amazing because I was an empath that didn't know I was an empath. I
Mm.
had no idea. And of course I was always, supporting others, and so I was always picking up energy. And so now, like I don't have that. Like now I get to be my own energy force wherever I go and know that I'm safe and protected and grounded, and that if something is happening that flips somebody out, it's them, right? It's not me. I no longer am wondering what I did wrong or bad.
Mm.
I can give them grace for the moment they're in and be on with my day.
Right. And that really liberates you. Right? It liberates you to step in fully to wherever you go because you're not worried.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, Laura, thank you so much for showing up and speaking to those within the group around your journey. We are right now currently accepting people into Journey of the Healer for 2021. This is our fourth year running this particular program, fourth or fifth year, I forget. Um,
Or
fourth year, and we have the most amazing people that we get to work with, and we feel so honored and so humbled by the people that go after what it is that they want, that really know there's more to life, that really want to make a contribution, that really want to live into their highest self and get reconnected to soul and get aligned. And we have everyone from moms who want to make a difference for their children and their families so that their kids grow up from a more empowered place, to professionals that are really soul driven, that want something else, that mimic our stories, right? Like they're very powerful, they're successful, and they're looking for more. And to those that want to be healers, that need to have one of the things we do. This goes from my background, right? In corporate America, I worked in the technology field for 20, no, 15 years. And we built systems and structures and processes so that we bring people on their journey from the beginning to the end so they see a magical transformation. And we work on 4 levels. We work on the physical, like what's being held, where's the energy in the body being held? What are your beliefs? That's all about emotional, how we see things, how we perceive things. Laura talked earlier about several of the beliefs she held about herself. Like she couldn't take care of herself because that meant that others weren't going to get their needs met. And it drove certain behaviors that didn't support her. We all have those limiting beliefs, right? And then we work in the energetics. Like what are the energetic blocks? What's in the energy between us and manifesting what we desire? And then of course we help to align people back to their soul. So if this is for you, sorry, I glitched out for a minute. If this is for you, I want you to what's the call, Laura? Callmiriam.com and
Yep.
schedule a Zoom call. You'll either get Laura, myself, or a couple of other healer coaches that we have in the program who are all amazing, amazing people who love to help support people on their journeys to get them to where they really want to be.
Right. And my invitation for you, everybody who's listening, is to make that call from your heart, from your knowing, from that place that's saying, "Yep, go ahead and make the call. Yep, go ahead and make the call." Not from your brain trying to say what you're going to get out of it or how it's going to work, but just be connected into. If you feel like, ooh, like if you have something that shifts in you, then that's the place to schedule a call. Like that's the equivalent of Marianne's. You got blocks in your heart chakra. I'm like, and me going, what? So no.
You actually reminded me of one of my clients a couple years ago. I had just started to see her, and she was walking out the door. I only had this one or two sessions with her, and she came in to work on her kids. And as she's walking out the door, and I kept getting the message loud and clear, invite her, invite her, invite her into Journey of the Healer. And I'm like, really? Why? But I've learned to follow my messages. So I invite her. And her first reaction is, oh, yeah, no, I don't want to be a healer. I'm a businesswoman, right? And she later fessed up to us that in her head, she was hearing this message like, go, go, go. It was so funny. So check in with your own intuition and see if you're being called or not. And we would love to connect with you if you feel called to go on your journey, to get to a deeper place, to bring out your brilliance into the world. So with that, we're going to say bye. And thank you so much, Laura, for coming on and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me. And
Okay.
I look forward to all the wonderful people we get to meet.
All right. And so here's the funny thing. I don't know how to end this. Oh, here it is. All right. Bye, everyone.
That's
I
us. That's how
tell
we
you, I'm the best person you will ever meet, even though I worked in technology for 15 years. Go figure. All right. Bye, everyone.